So some quick notes here before we jump into your quiz today. What we're looking at is how to determine if something is a function or not. So this question is, you can graph lots of different things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're always a function. So we're trying to answer the question, is this a function or not? And we have three ways of doing that. So I'm going to reveal them here and I want you to write them in. The first way that we can reveal if something or test if something is a function is from a table. And we're going to practice that here in just a bit. So we can look at a table of x and y points and we can say, okay, this is a function or this is not a function. So what if it don't have a table though? If we don't have a table, we might be able to determine it from what's called a mapping. That might sound a bit weird right now, but a mapping, you'll see, is basically we're going to be mapping points to each other. So we have from a table, from a mapping, and then last but not least, you can also determine it from a graph. And actually, the graph one is the easiest one. So we'll save the easiest one for last there. So from a table, what does that look like? So if we do our notes very quickly here, you can see we have two different tables off to the left-hand side. And we can kind of fill those in, and I'll show you how you fill those in here in just a second. But basically, if you want to determine if something is a function from the table, you basically have to ask yourself this question. You're going to see if any of the x values, okay, see if any of the x values, and this is the most important word, repeat themselves. Okay, see if any x values repeat. So I honestly don't care what my y values are. Your y values can be anything under the sun. So we could put in 4, 7, another 4, 2, -9. They can be anything you want them to be. All we really care about here is, do our x values repeat themselves? So let's take a look. We have -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. So did any of those x values repeat themselves? And since they didn't, since there's no repetition over there, so if you want to, write that in on the side here, okay? There's no repetition of our x values, so no repetition. All right. Our conclusion is that yes, this is a function. Since there's no repetition, that's the only thing that breaks the rules if it repeats. So since there's no repetition, then yes, it is a function. Okay. All right. So now let's take a look. What about it does matter, right? The last thing is here, it does not matter, rather. It does not matter if the y values repeat. So a lot of students get a little thrown off when they see something like they might look at their table and they see in their table the numbers 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. You know what? That's totally fine. It's the y values are allowed to repeat themselves. There's no issue with that. The only question we have to ask ourselves is, does the x value repeat itself? So let's go ahead and identify that. Does the x value repeat itself in our table here? Well, if we take a look, we have -2, -1, 0, 1, -2 a second time. So because the x values repeated themselves, this is not a function. No, this is not a function because of that repetition. So hopefully when you're looking at a table of points or even just a list of points, you're looking for the x values to repeat themselves. If that happens, then it's no longer a function. So let's move on. Let's take a look at from a mapping. So this is what mappings mean. Mappings basically take an x coordinate like this 6 and maps it to this 36. That means that 6 is going to 36. It's mapped to it. Okay. So the question is, can which of these mappings is allowed and which of these mappings is not allowed? So the really what you want to kind of think about is this. When you're looking at your mappings, it is totally fine for this to happen right here. You can see that both -2 and 2 went to 4. Remember, 4 is allowed, the y values are allowed to repeat themselves. So that's not a problem at all. The issue we have, if we come over here to the right-hand side, is when the number 4, a single x in our domain, goes to two different y values. That's the issue. That's when problems arise. So this example over here on the left-hand side is totally fine. No problem at all. But this example, nope, this is not a function. The reason why is because you have a single 4 going to two different range values, two different y values. So our conclusion is this: each blank value can blank have, all right? So each x value, okay, let me figure this out real quick. Let me look at the green one. Each blank value can have, all right, there we go. We're going to do this one first. Each y value can have as many friends as they want. Now, friends we're using there is kind of a silly term. Basically what's happening is the y value here has two different friends, right? We could create a mapping, right? We could create a mapping like this. This is my y, this is my x. And we have a few numbers over here, 0, 1, 2, and only have a single number over here, and they all go to that. That's totally fine. No problem there, okay? So each y value can have as many friends, quote unquote, so to speak, as they want. But each x value can only, there we go, can only have, in a sense, one friend, okay? So if you come back to my mapping one more time, the x value here has only got one friend, 7. The y value has only got, the 1 has only got one friend. The 2 only has one friend. So basically what's happening is we can have a single line leave from each x, a single line leave from each x. But right here, we have two lines leaving. That's the big no-no, okay? So the conclusion is x's can only have, quote unquote, one friend. Y's can have as many as they want. And last but not least, we can then identify from a graph, and the graph is really the easiest one. What we do is we call it the vertical line test. The vertical line test. So to be a function, this blue line over right here, our blue line, our graph itself, all right, can only touch or cross, however you want to say it, touch or cross, all right, touch or cross the red line. So this red line here can only touch or cross that red line one time. Okay, you can only cross that red line one time. That's super important for us to identify. So as you can see right here, it only touches one time. We've only have that one point. But on the bottom, if you look right here, we're crossing once, twice, three times. So twice would have been enough, but three times definitely breaks the rule. So last but not least, you can see this right here. That is a function, only crosses one time. This is a function, only crosses one time. This is not a function, it crosses three different times. So what do you think about this one? What do you think that one would be? What do you think about this one? So with your neighbor, try to answer that for me real quick. All right, hopefully you gave this one a thumbs down. This one is not a function because you can see it crosses twice right there. But this one, hopefully you gave it a thumbs up because nowhere is it crossing more than one time, as many vertical lines as I draw. All right, hopefully that helps. A little bit of notes right there before your quiz. Best of luck to you today.